Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Jason Davis with you on Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com, where you can support the show. Music today courtesy of Patrick Schroeder. Very funky edition of Soccer Morning today. I like that. It's a good way to start a Wednesday. It's hump day. Funk and hump day, they seem to go together some way, somehow. It is Wednesday. We've got plenty of soccer to talk about today. We've got Champions League action from yesterday, although maybe the less said about that game, the better. Champions League today. David Cartledge, our friend who covers Spanish soccer, will join us to talk both about Chelsea and Atletico Madrid, first leg there at the Calderon, and whether one team has the advantage. I mean, look, you go back to Stamford Bridge with a scoreless aggregate line, then you're probably feeling pretty good if you're Chelsea. I mean, Mourinho got done what he wanted to get done. It bored the heck out of everybody, but it was a successful trip to Spain for Chelsea. And Diego Simeone won't feel like it's out of his reach, and being the type of coach he is, this isn't exactly against his inclinations either. Both of these guys. I said 2-1 yesterday. I must have been insane. I must have been temporarily insane yesterday when I suggested we might get a 2-1 score. I don't know what was wrong with me. Of course, Mourinho and Simeone are going to play just the most cagiest, ugliest, whatever that was. What was that? All right. Before we get into that, before we get to David Cartledge, and also on this show today, Peter Shad, voice of the Vancouver Whitecaps, will join us to talk about their season so far. A couple of bright spots in Vancouver. What's good? What's moving forward well? Carl Robinson in charge for his first season as a coach. How's that going? We'll talk to Peter in about half an hour. First, this is the part of the show where it's necessary for me to remind you, Soccer Morning is supported by you, the listener. We are here because you guys like the show. And essentially, your support is a vote to keep us on the air. We are not subsidized by any other outfit. This is not an MLS supported show, an SUM supported show, an American soccer organization. Nobody's stepping up. Google, nobody's stepping up to subsidize us right now. Now, that could mean something. You can view that one way if you want to, but it also means that we are independent and need your help to stay on the air. And I had a couple people on Twitter, and I'll make this brief. I apologize. A lot of you don't care about how the sausage is made, and I get that. And I don't want to belabor this, but somebody asked me, where's the money go, that kind of thing. Where's the support go that we give you guys? And I think the honesty is the best policy here. And again, nobody cares about how the sausage is made, and maybe I'm airing my dirty laundry a little bit, and I'll just use every analogy in the book. But for me, the support goes to paying my rent and keeping my internet on. I mean, that's the basic stuff here. That's where this is. This being the job that I'm doing, that's the kind of support we need. Soccermorning.com for that. Okay, keep it brief. Just to impress upon you, we have a week left in the month. We're about 40% or just a tick over 40% of the goal we set. If you have questions, concerns, comments, if you want to complain, if you want to give a nod of support via email, if that's the way you want to support the show, that's great. Do that. Jason at NASN.TV is my email address. One of them. And you can get me that way. I will respond to anybody who emails me. Everybody. And I'm on Twitter, DavisJSN. And the show's on Twitter. And speaking of the show being on Twitter, I thought we'd start today. Phone lines are open as well, by the way. 347-756-6276. I thought we'd start today with a little fun based on that Atletico Madrid Chelsea game that happened yesterday, because I watched it. I had it on the television. It's Champions League semifinals. How are you not going to have that on your television if you are available to watch it? Those of you who DVR'd that and then watched it after work, when did you quit? That's what I want to know. When did you turn it off? Like, enough. Maybe you avoided the scoreline and you stuck it throughout the whole 90 minutes plus. Wow, that's commitment. If you did know the scoreline, I can't imagine you stuck it out. So I thought about this morning. Atletico Madrid Chelsea was as interesting as ... For me, a couple of things. As interesting as a congressional hearing on regulations in the banking industry. About that interesting that game was. Maybe because Peter Cech went out. Petr Cech without with an injury. Maybe that made it slightly interesting for you. Apparently that was a dislocated shoulder. That's bad. Mark Schwarzer, oldest player ever in the Champions League knockout rounds when he came in for Czech in that game. Atletico Madrid-Chelsea was as interesting as a reading of a doctoral dissertation entitled Foreign Direct Investment in Intergenerational Linkages and Consumption Behavior. Something you want to sit through for 90 minutes? That's about how interesting that was. You got your own thoughts on that. At Soccer Morning on Twitter. I'll read the best. Hell, I'll read any of them. That every single tweet will be more interesting than that game that happened yesterday. And again, exactly how Mourinho wanted it to play out. Maybe he would have loved to have nicked a goal. Sure. Get a goal away in the Champions League semifinal. That puts you in a great spot. But ultimately, his tactics worked out the way he thought they would, the way he wanted them to. In fact, at one point, somebody threw out on Twitter, yeah, Chelsea wants to counter, but why are they giving the ball up so easily? And after the game, Mourinho said, hey, look, I told my guys not to worry about the ball too much because Atletico Madrid is a good pressing team. You don't want to end up giving up turnovers in dangerous positions, which are going to lead to goals, which clearly that was a number one priority for Chelsea and Mourinho was do not allow a goal to Atletico Madrid at the Calderon at home. Get back to Stamford Bridge without any goals scored by Atleti, and you'll have a chance to win. You'll have a chance to go through. And thanks to UEFA for this draw, by the way. Now, I suppose it could be worse. I suppose Chelsea and Atletico Madrid could be on opposite sides in opposite semifinals, and they both get through, and we end up with this as a final. That would be sad. That would be terrible. That would be World Cup 2010 final, except worse. Much worse. Not because it wouldn't be necessarily about one team kicking the other. It would just be this stalemate. That is as much as we want to laud Simeone for what he's done at Atletico Madrid, and they're on they have a chance at the La Liga title. It's something nobody would have picked them for. They have a chance at a Champions League title. Something no one would have picked them for. The man can play some pretty excruciating soccer. He can set up some pretty excruciating soccer with his team. If Diego Costa doesn't go and get a goal, that's what you get. Now, I'm painting with a broad brush here. Apologies. That's not always what Atletico Madrid looks like. But Eddie on Twitter, Mourinho criticizes West Ham, which I think that was the comment about them playing 19th century football. Is that right? He criticizes West Ham, Big Sam, and then does that. Look, that's par for the Mourinho course. This is what the man does. This is the way he goes about his business. He doesn't have any concern for how he might sound like a hypocrite in the end. He's going to go out and play his game. And I think the saddest thing about Mourinho at this point, and I can't remember who said it on Twitter. I'd give full credit if I could. Maybe it was Maxi, our friend Maxi. He's gone into his Bill Belichick phase in terms of dress on the sideline. Now, no cut off sweatshirts or whatever the hell that is that Belichick wears, but team gear, the big team branded coat. We addressed this with Luke Moore. What happened to dapper Mourinho on the sideline? Diego Simeone looks like he's straight out of a fashion mag over there on the other sideline. Or, sorry, down the sideline. But Mourinho looks like he's, what? What is he doing exactly? This is the Mourinho, the development of Mourinho's personality, his character, whether it's public or private or whatever the elements that are going into his transformation are fascinating to me. Because he is moving from dapper, erudite, mind game playing Mourinho to this sort of sad figure. He's a sad figure now. Luke Moore said it. He's instead of the guy you love to hate, you just hate him because he's not. I don't know what exactly is it. Help me pin this down, guys. What is it about Mourinho that's different now than before? And I think the Real Madrid experience really did ruin him in a lot of ways. Now, that doesn't mean he's not a good manager still. It doesn't mean he's not capable of great things. He's got Chelsea in the chase for a title. He's got Chelsea in the chase for a Champions League trophy. Those are big things. He doesn't have a striker worth anything, really. And he's managing to do this. But at the same time, he's complaining. He's whiny Mourinho now. It used to be Mourinho would complain, and you had that little tick of respect because you knew exactly what he was doing. He was playing the mind games. He was attempting to draw attention away from his players. He was working the audience. Even if you knew you were being worked by Mourinho, you still respected him for trying. And you may have even been susceptible. That thing where you're conscious that you're being conned, but you allow yourself to be conned. He's not capable of that anymore. It doesn't seem to me. And now he's complaining about the schedule, fixture congestion, complaining about a Saturday game for Chelsea. And maybe this is on the FA to help them out, to help out Chelsea. But it just seems like whining. Oh, poor Chelsea, poor Mourinho. Like Atleti and Real Madrid and Bayern Munich don't have to deal with the same sort of problems. Yeah, games get moved around. I think in the case of the La Liga teams, they were given the option of pushing back a date. I think Real Madrid took the option and Atleti didn't, if I have that correct. So I suppose that if that's not something that was presented to Chelsea, then maybe Mourinho has a point. But again, it still seems like sour grapes. It still seems like moaning and crying and whining. And this comes in the immediate aftermath of that incredibly sarcastic take on the refereeing in Chelsea's loss to Sunderland. He's not that guy anymore. He's not that striking figure who has this innate ability to manipulate everything to his advantage. He's just whiny. He's just whiny. It's been a slow collapse into this, I guess. Again, the Real Madrid experience has changed Jose Mourinho. Charles Hatfield says he's going for the mad scientist look. Okay, is that what it is? Cole says this game, Atletico Madrid-Chelsea, was as interesting as how close the Bundesliga title race is. All right. As interesting as the Bundesliga title race at this point in the season, which is not interesting because the title's done. Bayern Munich is your champion. Bayern Munich dominated everybody. So we get that game yesterday. That terrible nullification game. Both sides not canceling each other. I guess that's what it is. But again, they want to play that way. It's sort of like a game of hot potato. Here, no, you take it. No, you take it. We're just going to pack them in, let you come at us. You won't get a good shot off. There were maybe, 2 or 3 decent chances in that game? You had a couple, you had guys just lumping the ball over the top. I mean, how many times do you see Frank Lampard just play an aimless ball nowhere? Aimless ball to nobody. Just, Fernando Torres is up there. Let me just hoof the ball up and see what happens. And it's not because Frank Lampard's not a good player who can't pick the right pass. It's because that's the way Chelsea wanted to play it. Today we get Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. Now, is there a chance we get the complete opposite of what we saw yesterday? I'm going to ask David Cartledge what he expects from this game. It should be much more. There should be many more fireworks in this game than there were yesterday. These two teams can attack. These two teams have incredible attacking players who will create chances. We may have an overabundance. Maybe today will make up for yesterday. I don't know if that's really how we view this sport in this game. You get 90 minutes of excruciating, boring soccer. If you get 90 minutes of really exciting, end-to-end, fast-paced action, does that make up for the Champions League game yesterday? No. Twitter's fun during a boring game. Twitter's fantastic. People just can't keep it to themselves. And I'm one of them. I'll admit it. Can't keep it to yourself. Can't keep it to themselves. They have to say that that's boring. It's terrible. I hate it. What's going on here? Did soccer lose yesterday? Soccer lost yesterday. Chelsea and Atletico Madrid. And now we get another game next week. I'm sorry. This is going to be great. One of these teams will be in the Champions League final. Remember that as well. Now that they'll also be up against one of Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, which should salvage the title match. But it's still, you still look at these teams and you go, oh man, let's celebrate what Atleti is doing in the league and in the Champions League, punching well above their weight, loaded with debt, but punching well above their weight, considering the handicaps they have in that country. Celebrate them for that. Celebrate Diego Simeone, but also recognize, hey, man, they can really play some terrible, terrible soccer. I got a comment on the away shirt that I'm wearing today, USA away shirt. I just want to note again, this is courtesy of Jen Cooper of Keeper Notes, which is on Sundays, 10 to 11 a.m. Central Time, on Yahoo Sports Radio, 1560 in Houston. Check out Jen's show down there. Hope to have Jen on in the future. She is helping call Houston Dash games in the NWSL. So look forward to that. Also in European soccer news, among the big clubs, word out that Barcelona's transfer ban has been suspended while they file their appeal, which you knew was coming. And it was interesting in the aftermath of the ban being announced that there were two different storylines. There were two different things coming out. One, Barcelona will appeal. I think we all assumed they would. But there was also the idea that they couldn't appeal, that there was no appeal process. Well, apparently that's completely wrong. This is from the BBC. Barcelona can buy and sell players this summer after FIFA suspended its transfer ban on the club. The suspension is on hold pending an appeal. Spanish champions were originally sanctioned by FIFA's disciplinary committee on the 2nd of April for breaking rules in the case of 10 minors, punished with the ban and a fine of 450,000 Swiss francs. After Barcelona followed through on their promise to fight the ban, FIFA decided that due to the complexity of the case and the possibility of a further appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, it was unlikely to be concluded before the opening of the transfer window on July 1st and therefore suspended the punishment. This is FIFA saying, this is going to get drawn out. We can't get all of the appeals done before the opening of the transfer window, so we might as well just suspend it. Now, this is obviously a boon to Barcelona. But it brings us back to that issue, and this is both for Barcelona and the case of these 10 minors for whom they are accused of breaking the rules regarding player movement and signing minors, bringing minors into their academy from foreign countries, and the financial fair play rules, which we talked about. Both City and PSG likely to be sanctioned for financial fair play violation. What are those sanctions going to be? What stomach does UEFA have for punishing the biggest clubs, the richest clubs in the world, when it comes to these new rules? Are they going to? They've already said, or it's already been reported, that they're not going to keep them out of European competition. So these teams, both of whom are going to qualify for the Champions League next year, will not be stripped of their Champions League spot. Is there another punishment that even comes close to what that punishment could be, to the deterrent that losing your Champions League spot could be? Anything? A massive fine of what? A fine of what? Barcelona got fined 450,000 Swiss francs. I'm guessing that's not a lot of money for Barcelona. Now, different rules, different sets, I understand, different regulations, different bodies, as a matter of fact. FIFA sanctioning Barcelona, UEFA sanctioning the teams that violated financial fair play. But unless they're going to go way over the top, 50 million pounds, 75 million pounds, 100 million pounds, not that much. Well, maybe not. Why not? These teams, does anybody believe that PSG and Manchester City can't afford a 100 million pound fine? Again, if they are guilty of violating the rules, and UEFA decides that, yeah, we wanted to take a hard stance on this. We wanted to tie spending to turnover. We're going to keep teams responsible financially, stem this tide of incredible debt that is rampant across Europe. And now that doesn't apply to PSG and City because they have private owners who can dump as much money into the club as they want, or could before financial fair play. But if you're going to make smaller teams follow those rules and tie their spending to their revenue, you're going to have to make the bigger clubs do it too. It's only fair. Why should Portsmouth be limited by their revenue, but City and PSG be able to take private funds from their owners and dominate? So you have those rules in place. All right, well, what are the sanctions? How are we going to keep teams from violating these rules in the future? Let's give them a punishment. What should it be? A transfer ban for 1 window, 2 windows, a fine? Again, money for PSG and Man City. What does it exactly mean? How much will actually hurt them? And then loss of Champions League spots. To me, that seems like the one. I know this is very tough on crime sort of attitude. But the rules don't mean anything if you're not going to have them backed up by the sanctions. Barcelona gets off because there are multiple appeal processes, including all the way up to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Those appeals will not be completed by the time the window's open. So here, have a window. You broke the rules. We know you broke the rules. We've said you broke the rules, but go ahead and have your window. Barcelona should now, do everything they can to maximize this window. They have Ter Stegen coming in. Still not sure if that was a done deal that was not impacted by the transfer ban, but doesn't matter now. They can get him in. They need to they need to fix their back line. They need to get defenders in. They need to get younger in a couple of spots. And imagine they'll do that now, because guess what? The rules don't matter. Is the appeal again? I mean, look, at some point you can't really blame the club for exhausting their appeals. But if Barcelona knows they broke the rules, would it be in their best interest? Remember, this is a different sort of club, or they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be more than a club. They're supposed to have higher standards. They're supposed to be more responsible. Supposed to be. I think it just shakes that foundation a little bit to see Barcelona go through the same stuff everybody else would. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe we shouldn't hold Barcelona to a higher standard. They're still competing in the same modern football world as everybody else. Why wouldn't they use every possible means to get out of a transfer ban that would limit their ability to fix their team so that they can go for a La Liga title next year, so they can go for a Champions League title next year, because guess what? Lionel Messi is not going to be this good forever. Why shouldn't they do that? Well, maybe they should. Doesn't mean that I have to continue to respect them in the same way that I might have before, or the way that they present themselves. I like Barcelona. They obviously played amazing soccer under Pep Guardiola. They're struggling a little bit. Things aren't quite as smooth. But I like Barcelona. I have no problem with Barcelona. I love watching Lionel Messi play. Spent hours last week showing my kid Lionel Messi goals. And those Lionel Messi goals don't happen if not for the players around him, which is the entire team Barcelona. So I have complete respect for them as a soccer team playing on the field. But everything else above that, that's when you get into these sticky issues. And it brings me back to a point about NYCFC. I think this was made by our friend Eddie in Brooklyn. The fact that they gave this first season ticket to Mariano Rivera is a concocted PR stunt. Well, of course it is. Yeah, everybody knows that. It's not organic. Very little is organic anymore. Organic is the history of Barcelona. Organic isn't what's happening now. Organic would be, let's only take kids from Catalonia and bring them in and turn them into pros. Now, they have a lot of that, but they're also scouring the globe. 10 minors that they brought in violation of the rules that FIFA set in place to keep clubs from exploiting young players, essentially. It's a big deal for a 10-year-old kid to pick up and leave his home country and move to Barcelona to join La Masia and try to become a professional. That's a massive deal. That's not a small choice. Maybe if your kid is presented with that choice, if my kid's 10 and Barcelona comes to me and says, "We want your kid to come play at La Masia, but there's no guarantee of success. You're taking him away from his friends. You're giving him you're fundamentally changing his upbringing. His life is going to be soccer. Isn't there something on the other? Don't you have to worry about, okay, my kid as an adult, if he doesn't make it as a pro, don't you have to worry about these things? Am I the only one that thinks about this stuff? Show of hands on Twitter at Soccer Morning. Your kid, imagine you have a kid if you don't have a kid, is offered a spot at La Masia when he's 10 years old. Now, this requires you uprooting your life as well, because under the FIFA regulations, you have to go. Now, FIFA also says you're supposed to go for your own reasons, not for football reasons. That Barcelona can't compel you to uproot your life and move to Barcelona for just to join the club. It has to be sort of, well, I've got a job in Barcelona. We're just going to happen to be there. Oh, look, my kid can now enroll in La Masia. No, can't be like. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. That's not the way it is, of course. But show of hands, if your kid is given the opportunity to join La Masia at 10, and it fundamentally changes everything about your life and his life, is it just simple? Yeah, it's Barcelona. It's their academy. Of course I'm going. Of course we're going. How much say does a 10-year-old have in his future? Look, this is why we criticize FIFA up and down all day. This is why these rules exist. And if Barcelona doesn't seem to care about them, Barcelona has no interest in following them, doesn't that make Barcelona sort of the bad guy? They care about producing good players, and they are giving these kids an opportunity. There is that. It is an opportunity. You're going to a celebrated academy at one of the biggest clubs in the world. Of course, that's an opportunity. But again, balancing out how all of those other little things. Vince points to an American kid who's there, whose name I'm not going to mention because I have a policy. If and when that kid makes the senior team and becomes a professional, then we'll talk about him. Rick and Philly says, La Masia, no, but and I'm not going to try to pronounce your Dutch stuff, Rick. Sorry. Yeah. If his kid could go to Holland, he would do that. Gringo Mark, teams like Chivas in Mexico teaches their academy players at least how to speak some English. Okay, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that has to do with anything. Cole says if the kid doesn't make it at Barca, he'll likely have a professional career somewhere else. Maybe. Not always. That's not 100%. I suppose some kids will become Oriel Rosell and end up in the United States going to school while they're playing professional soccer for Sporting Kansas City. Maybe. Maybe some kids will become that. But again, it's think about your childhood, whether you had a happy one or not. Most likely, everybody listening had a normal childhood. If anybody did spend some time in an academy, call us because I would love to hear about that. But most of you had a normal childhood. That means it's sort of difficult to put yourself in the position of a 10-year-old who's moving to a foreign country. Now, this may benefit them in the long run. Yeah, there's that too. But this is the kind of stuff you have to think about as a parent. I don't know. Good. I mean, it's good to have the opportunity to grow up in a system that turns out great soccer players. So other things that matter as well. And again, if Barcelona broke the rules, they're going to avoid the punishment, at least for now. Transfer ban lifted because appeals are going to be coming. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk to Peter Shad, voice of the Vancouver Whitecaps, get his take on everything Vancouver and MLS to this point in the 2014 season. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com. Support us. Thanks.
Mad crazy skills will come. I see a man shot tongue. Angels would drop now and take him away.
up and let's get ill.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
It's kind of lucky I'm not on terrestrial radio. Not that that word is particularly bad, but I didn't think about this censored version of that song. Patrick Schroeder picking our music today. On the line with me now from Vancouver, Peter Shad, voice of the Vancouver Whitecaps out there. Peter, how are you, sir?
Well, now I'm awake after that.
And now that woke you up? Okay. Yeah, that's we're letting our listeners pick our music. That happened to be one. The rest of the rest
That's perfectly fine with me. And greetings from the beautiful West Coast this morning.
Yeah, so Peter, we're here to talk Vancouver. This is sort of to give, you know, the sense that I have of Vancouver as a team, and I may have said this to you before when you come on the show. A team with talent that has yet to realize it. We talked about the coaching decision issues after Martin Rennie was fired, and whether or not the structure of the Whitecaps leads to efficiency in that system. But we're here now, and 9 points, 7 games, some good things to point to, and Carl Robinson settling in. First of all, how is he doing so far in your estimation?
Oh, he's a breath of fresh air for everybody, and you know, if you look at it in a hindsight perspective, you could say it's a shame the Whitecaps didn't just hire him right away after Martin Rennie to show a little bit of faith in him and to show a little bit of confidence in what they're doing, because ultimately they did get the right guy. Yes, they did talk to Bob Bradley, and I realized that, you know, for a fan base that has seen 3 coaches come and go already, they wanted to know that the Whitecaps were after a decent name, and Bob was interested in the Whitecaps, specifically because of the way they were developing youth. But in the end, they got the right guy. They got a guy who has a track record as a player at the highest level, not only for club but country. He's played for some excellent managers in Toshak and Nick McCarthy among them, you know, and so he's had the frame of reference from the overseas perspective, so he understands that. But he's also played in Major League Soccer and then learned from Hans Baca in New York and whoever else he's sort of played with, and he's paid his dues, as it were, to be a coach by being an assistant, by being a playing assistant. And what he's done is he's basically come in and he's just done the proper job. He has created a culture of competition within training. He has promoted young players and played young players without fear, and so they then feel like they're, you know, able to go out and play and compete. And he's dealt with some tricky decisions with veterans who, you know, haven't performed at times, which perhaps is the more difficult job, because as you and I both know, it's hard to put players who have a decent wage on the bench, and especially big personalities. So I think he's done a marvelous job. He's been absolutely magnificent with the media. From that sense, he's been completely open with us, and he allows media into every single training session. There is no closing of training. He has nothing to hide, and so it's been really, really good. And then just in specifics of what he's done on the field, you know, he has a way that he wants to play, but he's not afraid to be proactive and make substitutions. He's not afraid to be flexible, which was arguably the biggest complaint last year, was the lack of flexibility. And, you know, in the game against LA on the weekend, you know, he started with a diamond, which he then changed by putting Kekuta Mane in at the number 10 role, which was inspired somewhat by Raheem Sterling at Liverpool and his performance over the last couple of weeks. And then he went to a total 4-4-2 with Mane wide left and Eric Hurtado wide right. And in every single setup, the team looked comfortable and looked dangerous. So there's flexibility within the squad of players. There's flexibility within the way he puts them out on the park, and he trains that way all through the week. He gives them the different scenarios, and it's not like they're all of a sudden just tinkering and trying something new. They will have trained those different setups right throughout the week. So a very prepared manager knows exactly what he wants, and as a player, I guess that's all you can ask for. As
an impartial observer of the Whitecaps, my thing is I want to see that young talent get a chance to play, Peter, and to show what they can do. It's Maddox, it's Kekuta Mane, certainly it's Tybert. It's all of these guys who look like future all-stars at the very least in this league, and are sort of maybe putting it together a little bit. I mean, 2 wins so far isn't anything to write home about, but there's signs, and certainly the comeback against LA twice last weekend is a sign of that as well. And Mane in particular is fantastic to watch. Is that you mentioned Robinson leaning on that? Is that a criticism of Martin Rennie, that he was just unwilling or unable or just not philosophically inclined to give those guys the proper time to settle in?
I don't think Martin trusted the young players, and I think Martin was consumed with winning and having his own record be good, and maintaining a job. In my opinion, anyway. I mean, the reluctance to put on players started as far back as Russell Tybert. I think he actually had to be talked out of putting Russell Tybert on the park when he made his astonishing substitution where he scored 2 goals against the Galaxy. And Martin depended on guys like June Marcus Davidson and Matt Watson, all these guys he brought over from Carolina because they were his guys. And it's a totally different scene here now. And the way that the team ended up on Saturday, they had Johnny Leverone, a 24-year-old center back who's now in the picture for Honduras, the World Cup, because there's been a couple of injuries. But then you had, a 22-year-old Gershon Kofi, a 22-year-old Russell Tybert, a 19-year-old Kikuta Mane, Darren Maddox at 22, Eric Hurtado at 22, 23. So, he's put that group out there, and I think he still wants to get younger. He's got some unbelievable kids coming up through residency. And I think that the fan base right now is ready for that. I think they want to see kids, and I think they want to see these ripening fruits mature before their eyes, because the Whitecaps have invested so heavily in the youth setup with their residency program. So it's a really exciting time. The key is to get the veterans who are on the squad, and those are the Kenny Millers and the Andy O'Briens, etc. They have to be playing at their top level, and the 2 names I mentioned, well, they are, and they're also incredible mentors. And this is despite the fact that Kenny Miller is sort of in an ambiguous contract decision heading towards summer, and Andy O'Brien could be in his last year, but they don't act like it. They train as hard as they play, and they're always putting an arm around a young player, and that's part of how the hierarchy of the game works. It works that way everywhere else in the world, and it needs to work that way here. And Carl is fostering that environment where, really he doesn't even have to pick the team. The team is picking itself at this stage.
Those veterans, I imagine, are a major influence on those younger players. And I'm going to bring us to Darren Maddox, who made headlines in the offseason because he was at home in Jamaica and he said some things. I took a little bit of translation for some of us, but he said some things of an inflammatory nature about his time in Vancouver and about the possibility of another club wanting him and coming in for him and his playing time. And this, it seems to be that all of that stuff has been, swept under the rug, or maybe it's been addressed and he feels more comfortable. Is this a function of Robinson's leadership? Is it a function of a guy like Kenny Miller taking him under his wing? What exactly accounts for Darren Maddox being happy and playing well?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think, first of all, he realized what a dreadful mistake it was. And the funny thing was the comments came after Martin Rennie was fired. It wasn't like this was happening before the club was figuring out what it was going to do. Like he was presented with a chance at a fresh start, by the change at the coaching. So I don't know exactly what Carl Robinson would have said to Darren Maddox. But clearly it had an effect, and what we've seen, and you said it, he's just a happier player. And, I don't know how much that is down to Kenny Miller's mentorship, but I think most of it has to do with Carl Robinson. And I think Darren always, and like most of the players, got along with Carl because he was the number 2, and that was the transition that I think was going to be the most interesting one, was going from being an assistant to the manager. You're an assistant, you put your arm around the player, you give them a cuddle when they need it, sometimes you give them a kick in the butt. It's a different kind of relationship, and now all of a sudden you're in charge and you're having to tell players, you're not starting today. And Carl's made that transition beautifully, but he has maintained what it seems like to be a very good relationship with the young players. And I love the way how Carl's handled him, and he's put him in from minute 1, and he hasn't taken him out, really. And Darren, to his credit, has listened, and it is paying off. And where Darren Maddox has changed his entire approach is in the work rate up front. I mean, you're a defender when you're up as a striker. You have to defend their back line from getting out easily, and he's done that. He's never stopped working. His play back to goal has been excellent. He leads the team in assists, which is something that nobody would have guessed, going into this season. And now he has the 2 goals and probably should have another 2 on top of those. So he's really rolling right now. He's a delight to be around. I've just seen a guy turn from a spoiled and entitled kid who felt his lot was somehow not fairly being decided on his behalf to somebody who's now going out and earning it. And what a dynamic thing to have then, because Kenny Miller, he's always going to be a difficult player to play against. And if they could find a way to get Kekuta Manneh in there and have another option of danger, that's not going to be a fun team to play against or defend against, because the quick players are the ones that the defenders hate to deal with.
Is Manneh, he's 19 and he's full of talent and he's full of enthusiasm, and he seems like, and I've had the chance to interview him directly, he seems like the sweetest kid in the world when you talk to him. Is his mentality right for taking a major role in this team? Is he going to be a super sub type player for the foreseeable future, or can he grab a starting spot?
Well, that's a great question, and you're right. He's our baby-faced assassin. I mean, he is a lovely, lovely kid. And it's funny because Paul Dalglish, who's now on the RSL coaching staff with the Whitecaps are visiting this weekend, he said a number of years ago to Kekuta, even as a younger man, he said, this Raheem Sterling, this is a guy that you should be looking at, because this is the ICU is this kind of a player. And, last week the comparables between the two was really quite astonishing. I mean, both of them scored cracking goals from distance where the ball looked like it just exploded off their feet. And I think to begin the season, Kekuta was having some fitness issues, so he kind of didn't come into camp feeling all 100%. And so now he's slowly gotten into the flow of things. And it's an interesting one because Carl is constantly battling with that decision. Do I start Kekuta, knowing that there are some defensive liabilities, and that's the one thing, that still needs to be learned, and that's a mentality thing, because he can run all day, so he can cover that ground. It's just a matter of knowing when to do it and how to do it properly. Because if you do start him, I just think you give yourself more initiative at the beginning, and that was something that was clearly missing with the Galaxy in the first 20 minutes last week. So I think it's a matter of time, and I think it also plays in a little bit into what happens with Kenny Miller. Do they try to get Kenny on a much lower wage packet, keep him around, maybe help him transition into coaching, which is something that I know they think he wants to do, and Carl and Kenny have a very good relationship. Or does Kenny try to have one more payday and go back overseas to Scotland or the English Championship? I mean, those are the big questions. But I just can't see Carl not starting Kekuta at this stage, because he's such a weapon and he's a proper footballer. And I really feel like Kekuta will be the record-setting MLS transfer out somewhere in the very short period of time here, whether it's the next 2 years or less, because he's brimming with talent and he's only 19. So there's just a really, really bright future for the kid.
Yeah, somebody write that down. April 23rd, 2014, yep. Peter Shad.
Put it in ink, Jason. Put it in ink.
Kekuta Manneh will be the record transfer out of MLS. I'm looking at the table here, Peter. Vancouver currently above the red line in the standings. That doesn't mean anything considering we're 7 games in. But I'm looking at the rest of the West. I mean, this is a gauntlet, the Western Conference. Yeah, the Galaxy right behind Vancouver, and we all think the Galaxy will make the playoffs. And RSL coming up this weekend away, you mentioned that. I guess it comes back to Carl Robinson and what his mandate is and what the club has given him the opportunity to do. Is he allowed to give these kids a chance? And if maybe they come up a little bit short, that's okay. We'll come back next year with a slightly more mature team that should be ready to challenge. Or is he coaching for his job? Because with the turnover in Vancouver, we have to wonder, Peter.
Yeah, I think there's 3 things there. Number one, Carl has a short, medium, and long-term plan. And, he keeps bringing that up because he needs to be given the chance to do that. And I think the club realizes they need a chance to do that as well. But this is the first time that a manager has come in and done what the committee, as an ethos, has asked. And their ethos is we've got to include these young players that we've invested in at the residency player. They must find a way into the squad. We have to get younger. We want to be exciting, and we want to be fast. And so he's living up to that end of it, no question. He's proactive as a manager. He makes proactive substitutions. And then long term, I think where they want to be is I think they want to be a team that is a conduit between South and Central America and the big leagues of Europe, where they take players in from the Colombias, the Uruguayas, Argentinas, where have you, in Central America, and sell them on and use that as partially a playing model, but also as a business model. And I think we're going to see some more evidence of that coming up this year. I think there's going to be a lot more changes in the Whitecap squad because it isn't 100% Carl's squad just yet. And then once it is Carl's squad 100%, well, then the expectation will start to increase on the results. But I think there's a little bit of forgiveness here in Vancouver. I think they want to see an exciting team, the fans, that is. And I think for management, they're loving what they're seeing right now because they're seeing a team that's there or thereabouts. And yes, they've got the Galaxy behind them with 2 games in hand. And ultimately, Jason, I mean, the problem that has plagued this franchise from day one is they have had an absolutely miserable time winning against Western opponents. It's just been that way from the beginning. That's where they have to start making up some ground here over the next few years. And they've never won at Real Salt Lake. They have 1-0 draw to show for it. So that's a daunting task. I mean, it's a tough task for everybody. But, you know, in Major League Soccer, if you can eke out 5 or 6 road wins somewhere, and especially if you could do it in your own conference, then, you know, you're going to give yourself a chance. But you're right about the West. I mean, Colorado, you know, they're a team to me that looks like they're going to be in the mix. Then you've got Dallas, who get off to their traditional great start, but will slide by the summertime as always. You know, Seattle, I wasn't convinced of the moves they made in the offseason, yet there they are in second place right now. And Portland hasn't won a bloody game yet, you know, and you know they're going to. So, I mean, it is going to come down to, you know, having to string some results together, and particularly within your own conference, if Carl, you know, wants to make the playoffs this year. But I don't see any chance that, you know, if he doesn't somehow get into the playoff picture, he's in jeopardy of losing his job. I just don't see the club doing that.
That's good to hear, because I think, you know, what we end up with so often in this game, and particularly in this league, is talent that's just good enough to sort of compete, and we end up with managers who decide that they're going to grind out 1-0 results and try to squeak in that way. If he has the opportunity to put an exciting team out there, and if they draw 2-2 all year, I'm fine with that, Peter. I know Vancouver Whitecaps fans might be a little disappointed, but if they draw 2-2 all year, I'm okay with that. I think that would be progress, not just for Vancouver, but for the league.
Well, and especially if the average age of that team getting the 2-2 draws is where it was a couple of times this year already, which is just a shade under 22, which is really amazing. In fact, there was they had a inter-squad game against the NASL's FC Edmonton, where the average age was just over 20, and really one player brought that average up, and they ended up beating them. And I thought they beat them handedly. You know, so there's the big picture here for the Whitecaps is they have to keep improving the assets they have, upgrading their assets. And we've seen evidence already from that with Carl, with a couple of these players that he's brought in. And if he continues to do that, and also there's another issue, you know, and that is to get really good value out of the players you bring in. You know, guys like Nicolas Mosqueda and Sebastian Fernandez, and although Sebastian Fernandez has dropped off significantly from the beginning of the season, he's on a decent wage packet for the type of player that he is. And even Pedro Morales, you know, listed on the Players Union website as $1.4 million. To me, given his pedigree and given what we've seen a couple of times, that seems like a bargain to me for a designated player. You know, where they have to ask some questions is Nigel Reo-Coker at $460,000, Jada Merritt at $300,000, Kenny Miller at $400,000 prorated from almost $1 million annual salary. These are the decisions that the club has made in the past that's hurt them, and they've got to stop making it. And Carl seems as pragmatic as he is dogged about that particular issue, getting the most out of every player's value, and that's how you're going to succeed in MLS.
Yeah, that's the other quirk of MLS that makes it more difficult to go win championships. Let's shift briefly here, because before we came on the air, Peter, you mentioned to me that there's a word out there that Darren Benton's talking to MLS. I wasn't aware of it before you brought it up, but I know you're a Villa guy. This is not. I don't know. It's not that sexy of a thing for me. It might have been 5 years ago, but of course Darren Benton wasn't coming 5 years ago.
Yeah, there you go. 30 years old, you know, and had the unbelievable year at Sunderland, where he scored 24 goals, and then, you know, made the record transfer to Villa and probably saved them under Gerard Houllier with, I think he got as many as 18 goals, if I remember. But then Paul Lambert came in, and so did Christian Benteke, and it all just absolutely fell apart from Darren Benton. And it was the way he dealt with it. I mean, I remember that first game of that season, he was given the armband, and it was pretty promptly ripped right off his arm, and he was sitting on the substitutes bench. But at 30 years of age, the man is a poacher. And I remember Martin Rennie said to me last year, I asked him about Darren Benton, he said, you know, I think he could be very good in this league. And, you know, we all wondered about Jermaine Defoe and Robbie Keane. I think those were two pretty good bets that would succeed, Keane and Defoe, and so far they're proving their worth. But I think at a estimated £6.9 million transfer fee for Bent, whichever team is interested there, they got to tread very, very carefully. But there's no doubt when he's in and around the box, he's a poacher, and I just hope that he's not one of those guys who's looking at America and saying, well, this is sort of my last chance. I'm going to take the big payout,
right.
And it should be a drop down from the level I'm used to, so I should be able to fill the back of the goal. And then all of a sudden you find out that, well, that's not the case. The
right.
league is a lot more difficult than you probably thought, and people start looking at you more because of the salary you're making. So that's an interesting one to see, and I'm curious to know which team around the league is looking for that kind of a payout for that kind of a player.
Yeah, better a 30-year-old than a 35-year-old. And I'm not meaning to slight Darren Bent's ability. He's certainly a quality goal scorer when he's at his best. I could see it working. I would be worried about the money being paid out because there's going to be a premium there. And that would be fascinating from an MLS collecting sort of second-tier English strikers. That would be an interesting thing. But I think what your point about the league being tougher maybe than you expect, the guys that come here and succeed, the Robbie Keanes and Jermaine Defoe to this point, although injuries are a factor, they're lucky enough to have another guy with them. In one case, it's Landon Donovan. The other, it's Michael Bradley, who are on that same level mentally, if you know what I mean, Peter. And that would be crucial to Darren Bent being successful.
That's it. If he was playing as the one striker in a 4-2-3-1 setup, for example, you'd really have to worry because, Darren is not known for his work rate. So you do have to have, like, if he's paired up with somebody else, and the funny thing is that the photo of Darren Bent on the league website was in Philadelphia when Villa made the trip there. I think it was last summer, the summer before. So immediately I thought, well, might Philadelphia be looking for a player like that? And then you look at who they have up front. Is it Andrew Wenger? Is it an aging Connor Casey? Is it Sebastian Letou? Is that enough of a distraction to allow Darren to find pockets to score? That's just speculation there, but I just made that link. But I'd be very interested because that name definitely came across the last 2 years as, maybe he could have the same kind of success as a Keane or as a Jermaine Defoe. But we shall see. It's a lot of money, I think, for a transfer fee.
It is a lot of money, and I think I think MLS fans should be careful what they wish for. If they just say, "Oh, Darren Bent, I would love to have him," make sure that he's a fit, and maybe you don't know until he arrives. But that's why it's hindsight. Peter Schad, voice of the Vancouver Whitecaps on Team 1410 up in Vancouver, talking to us about the Whitecaps season to this point, and Darren Bent, possible move to MLS. Thanks for your time as always, Peter. I appreciate it.
Jason, my pleasure chatting. Wonderful being on your show. All the best out there.
All right, thanks a lot. Polite Canadians, fantastic stuff. I'm sorry, I joke. Peter's great, and he's got that voice that always makes me feel like mine's not quite up to snuff. It's just not quite good enough. We've got a couple minutes until we grab David Cartledge to talk about the Champions League from a Spanish perspective, both Atleti yesterday against Chelsea in that scoreless draw, and Real Madrid today hosting Bayern Munich in a crucial first leg. Crucial for Real Madrid. No Ronaldo, right? That still hasn't changed as far as I'm aware. If Ronaldo's not available, Real Madrid has got to press their advantage at home in order to go back to Germany with a chance to advance to the championship or to the Champions League final in this particular tournament. All right, we talked Vancouver. We talked about Barcelona's transfer ban. We talked about terrible games yesterday. We'll get more into what Simeone did for Atleti with David Cartledge. I think now's the opportunity to talk about David Moyes. And I know you're all tired of David Moyes. You're sick of David Moyes and continually discussing everything about his ouster as Manchester United manager. The news today, the things that are out there that we can add to this story. First, Alex Ferguson's going to be part of the process to select the successor to David Moyes because that worked out so well the first time. Now, maybe Fergie's learned a lesson here. Maybe he has learned that to go out into the world and find somebody to manage United, you need a personality. And you wonder when Ferguson was considering possible candidates to succeed him, when he was handpicking that guy, you wonder if maybe he picked a guy who was of a different personality. Because obviously Ferguson's got an ego. Why would you want a guy who's going to come in and be a bigger ego or outshine you, particularly when you're not there to be part of the scene? I imagine that Alex Ferguson feels like Manchester United is his club. He probably has every right to do so, but that might affect how he chooses a successor. David Moyes also issued a statement through the League Managers Association in response to his firing. This is old hat at this point. This is standard operating procedure. In some cases, it smacks of double standards on the part of the LMA. Sometimes it sounds like sour grapes. Let's just go through this a little bit here. Ahead of David Cartledge in a couple minutes. This is from David Moyes. To have been appointed as manager of Manchester United, one of the biggest football clubs in the world, was and remains something of which I will always be incredibly proud. Taking charge after such a long period of continuous stability and success at the club was inevitably going to be a significant challenge, but it was one which I relished and never had a second thought about taking on. Okay, so there you go. I never considered not taking it. And how do you turn down Manchester United? He says, I have always believed that a manager never stops learning during his career, and I know it'll take invaluable experience from my time. I will take invaluable experience from my time as United's manager. I remain proud to have led the team to the quarterfinals of this year's Champions League, and I remain grateful to Sir Alex Ferguson for believing in my ability and giving me the chance to manage Manchester United. Now, that line, because again, it goes back to the handpicking of David Moyes by Sir Alex Ferguson. It makes you wonder whether Ferguson is the problem at this point. Ferguson as manager, maximizing the ability in a squad that may not be the most talented in the league, but is certainly up there. Great, that's fantastic. Wins titles, goes on, wins Champions Leagues in the past, has enormous success in trophy after trophy. Alex Ferguson as the man in the shadows, the man behind the scenes, the man pulling the strings, maybe not so good. Maybe this isn't the role he was built for. Maybe Alex Ferguson is fundamentally flawed in this way. Maybe his mentality doesn't. I think that's something to consider. I don't know that it harms his legacy. I suppose that's a question for Manchester United fans. 25 years of unprecedented success as manager of Manchester United for Sir Alex Ferguson. Does the fact that his choice of successor failed in less than a full season impact his legacy? Shouldn't. But we do live in a society that cares about what you've done for me lately. And the thing that Alex Ferguson has done lately for Manchester United fans is fail in the choice of successor. That's the most recent thing that Alex Ferguson has done to impact United's fortunes. And now he's going to do it again. And I suppose it's sacrilege for United fans to speak ill of Alex Ferguson after everything he's done and all that he's accomplished. But I wonder if you're afraid, United fans. Are you afraid of Alex Ferguson having a hand in this? Because it didn't work out the first time. Because it was bad. All right, let's take a break. We're going to shift gears. Champions League, something Manchester United won't be in next year. Oh, burn. David Cartledge will join us to talk Atletico Madrid, Chelsea, and certainly preview Real Madrid and Bayern Munich today. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning. Thanks again to Patrick Schroeder for picking the music today. SoccerMorning.com to support the show. Joining me now from Spain. I believe he's in Spain. I did not confirm that, but I'm calling him on a Spanish number. David Cartledge. Hi, David.
Hello, and yes, I'm in Barcelona.
There you go. In the heart of it, there in Barcelona, and I suppose we should talk about the suspension of the transfer ban at some point in this conversation. But let's talk about the teams that are remaining in the Champions League out of La Liga. The surprise underdog, everybody's favorite team right now, Atletico Madrid. First leg at home against Chelsea yesterday. A game that no one will really want to remember. I suppose if you really, really try hard, you can figure out a way to paint that as a masterclass of tactical brilliance on the part of somebody. But in the end, I suppose what really matters is the scoreline. I'm sure Chelsea is fine with this. I'm sure Mourinho is ecstatic. But is Simeone overly concerned going to Stamford Bridge with no goals?
I think there'll be a slight concern there on the part of Simeone, but knowing his character, I don't think he'll let that come out from the actual performance. He won't let everybody know that, but I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, he said he's unsatisfied with the result, as obviously you would be, but I think he knows his team's limits, and he'll hope that maybe Chelsea open up at Stamford Bridge, and then Atleti can do what they do best, and that is hit extremely directly on the counter-attack. So it could play in Atleti's hands that way.
Not that this was a large-scale thing, but there certainly seemed to be some surprise of Mourinho's setup for that game yesterday, at least in my Twitter feed. And maybe that was some people who don't really appreciate what Mourinho is likely to do in these situations, but there really was no shock. And I suppose that we should have known that this was coming.
Yeah, we certainly should have. But as you say, I think the reaction of some people is, I think it's a little dramatic, really. We expected this from Mourinho. And then later on, and then obviously there was more issues as well, even after the initial setup. There was obviously bookings, and then there was injuries, so he had to revert a little bit, even a little bit more defensively, if that is possible for some people to understand. and yeah, it was an extremely defensive performance, but I think he did what he set out to do. Atleti didn't score or win in the stadium that they have more often than not won at this season, taking a lot of teams apart, a lot of very good teams, and he avoided that. And then now they go back to Stamford Bridge, and yes, the tie is still very much in the balance, and Chelsea could easily be seen as the team who were in a more precarious position because of Atleti scored that away goal. But no, I think Chelsea did what they came to do, and that's about it. I wouldn't really get a bit too upset. I think a lot of people getting upset about it, and I wouldn't really waste my time doing so.
The interesting thing is there's always the reaction to the anti-football, and Mourinho has made his bones playing this way more often than not, and yet somehow escaped some of the harsher criticism over teams that play negative. And that's partly based on his personality and the fact that he wins things doing this. And he can adjust and he will attack when it serves his purposes. But I think that this is his default setting. What's the reaction? I mean, obviously the fact that he is late of Real Madrid is a factor in this. But what's the reaction inside Spain to the way that game went over and the way Chelsea played specifically? In fact, conceding the ball on numerous occasions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you can imagine, Mourinho is he's not the darling of the Spanish media at all. But by any means, you'd be hard pushed to find maybe 10 journalists who like him. But that's just his game. You pointed out he's done this so many times before, and he's won lots of games and he's won trophies playing this way before. And that's his style. But for me, I don't know. There hasn't been enough spotlight put on Atleti's performance.
Okay.
Atleti didn't play like they usually do, and they played. I made the point they played sideways last night as opposed to directly. There was lots of crosses being pinged into the box as well, which they don't do that much of. Yes, they do it, and they're very good with their set piece delivery. But last night, I think there was too much of it. There wasn't really an alternate outlet apart from crossing the ball into the box, which Cahill and Terrier absolutely superb at, and they weren't stretching it either. They weren't separated enough. It was a very tight net over the 4 Chelsea defenders last night in the box, and then they found it really easy. I don't think Atleti pushed them enough. I'd personally put more blame on Atleti performance than Mourinho's tactics.
Interesting. I mean, again, we sort of talked about this before we came on the air. The less said about the actual game, the better, but we worry about setting this up for the second leg and who's going to end up in the Champions League final. The other semifinal today, the first leg today, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, sort of it on paper seems like it will be the opposite sort of game. This could be a very, I don't know about open, but it could be a very fast, exciting sort of game with a lot of players who are capable of doing some pretty amazing things.
Yeah, definitely. I think this one's got potential to explode from very early. I could even see an early goal in this one, and then the tie really exploding from there. I think this is going to be definitely the better of the two. Ancelotti's talked about, Xabi Alonso as well talked a lot about how the team needs to get behind the ball a lot when Bayern are in possession, and they need to get 11. They need to get everybody behind the ball, and everybody needs to work hard, and it needs to be a team performance, Xabi Alonso is saying. But yeah, I think this one's going to be a lot more exciting because of the players that they have on shore in terms of technical quality is very high. They're also very powerful, and there's lots of pace there, as you mentioned, so we can get a lot of speed in this one as well. So I think this one's got a lot of facets to it that makes it a bit more interesting. So yeah, I think we can get a considerably more exciting game.
The marquee man for Real Madrid, Cristiano Ronaldo, is he fit enough to play in this game?
It's a race against time at the moment, but I think him, and then there's also trouble with Bale as well with his flu. And yeah, I think they're both going to be fit in time.
Will they be? I suppose the question then is whether or not they're 100%, and how much of a detriment that is to Real Madrid in the home leg against what is widely acclaimed to be Europe's best team right now.
Yeah, indeed, but they'll be aware that Bayern aren't without their problems. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen Bayern maybe look a bit more shaky, a bit more vulnerable, especially with their injuries that they have. They have their own troubles. So I think Real Madrid know their capability. They know what individuals they possess, and they also, as we spoke last week, know how excellent the team ethic is there now. So I think without Ronaldo, with or without Bale, I think Real Madrid can still do something. I believe a lot in this Real Madrid team. I think they can definitely go all the way, and they can definitely navigate this tie.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Karim Benzema is capable of something at any time. Angel Di Maria is capable of something. There's plenty of ability in Real Madrid to take advantage. What's the minimum result for Real Madrid to get out of this game to feel good about the second leg?
I think I ideally they'd love it to take a 2-0 there, but yeah. I'm probably going to say I think they can win this 1-0 and maybe have a few months of hanging on. But I think 1-0 will be okay for them actually to take, because I think they can score in Munich as well.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the other bit of Spanish news that is out today. Barcelona, who had been handed a transfer ban for 2 windows over their transgressions regarding young players, minors bringing into their that they brought into their academy. That transfer ban for the summer has been lifted by FIFA as sort of essentially because appeals will not be completed by the time the window opens. This is huge news for Barcelona, is it not?
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. It completely changes the perspective of everything for Barcelona heading into this summer. And I think there was a part of the board there. I think they knew this was going to happen as well. I think they probably looked at everything in terms of appeal times, in terms of everything if it went through CAS. And I think they looked at that and they were pretty confident this could happen. And it has. So they're going to be okay now, and they'll be able to go after the players that they want.
I imagine they were always preparing for the possibility that the ban, at least in the summer, would be lifted and they could go about their business. So what is their business? I mean, what's the pressing need that they can now address and have? Is it a matter of other targets being bandied about in Barcelona right now as we speak?
Yeah, definitely. I think the main one really is David Luiz from Chelsea, the centre back. I think he seems to be top of the list. And the idea would be that him and Piqué become the cornerstone, the pillars at the back in Barcelona for next season and onwards as well. I'm sure people will Barcelona fans will be concerned about the prospect in part of Piqué and Luis playing together, but that's how Barcelona see it. They see him as David Luis as the man. And then after that, then possibly in midfield, if they get Arturo Vidal from Juventus, I think that would be really good for them. And then I think they wouldn't mind a striker as well, somebody to play ahead potentially of Messi and Neymar, somebody a big number 9, not in terms of a tall number 9, but a big number 9 in terms of a pure striker. I think that would be good for them. But how many of those people they bring in, I'm not too sure under this current board, because I think even though this ban's been lifted, they will try and still play the austerity card in the market and maybe sign 2 players when Barcelona, I think, really need about 4 or 5.
It certainly seems that way. Is the austerity? What's the austerity a function of?
That's basically just not. The basis is they haven't been competing in the market like they should have. People like Thiago Silva, people like Marquinhos, who would have been ideal, I think, for Barcelona, have gone elsewhere, namely the PSG, who have lots of money. And Barcelona have money as well in terms of their income. They have a lot of money that comes into the club, but it's not getting put out there on the field. And that is the problem for a lot of Barcelona fans, and that's why they're potentially going to end up without a trophy this season. It's looking very much like they're going to end up without a trophy, and that is the problem. That is the result of being austere in the market when you're a top club. We see it at Manchester United as well. This is what happens when you don't invest, because there's always going to be a team who invests more than you, and they're going to take another 5 steps ahead of you, and you're going to go 1 behind, and by the time you know it, you're extremely far behind these clubs, these Bayern Munichs, these Manchester Cities, people like this.
It's interesting for Barcelona, who would typically see themselves as competing not only against Real Madrid within the country, but against Bayern Munichs and the Manchester Uniteds and those PSG with their money, those kind of clubs. But now also, at least this season, have Atletico Madrid to deal with. And we've talked, David, whether or not Atletico Madrid can continue this into multiple seasons. But from Barcelona's perspective, they're going to go through another managerial change this summer, are they not?
Yeah, it's looking that way potentially. I mean, there's mixed reports at the moment, so we don't really know. There's some people saying that we might actually continue now, and then and give him that time and try and, because they're seeing positives there. It's not been all negatives with Tata Martino. I think he's done a lot of good things, and they might give him more time. They might give him another year, give him a 1-year deal, and see how things go on from there. Especially if the market for the managers isn't really there, and especially if people like Klopp are saying, I'm going to stay there till 2018.
Right. If
somebody like Pep Guardiola is happy at Bayern Munich, and then where else do you go? Are these men who they look at, the people like Valverde, who I do rate very highly, are they better than what they've currently got and what they're already in place? And then more changing takes place with the new man as well. So I think they'll look at it from that perspective.
David Cartlidge joining us to talk about Spanish soccer, certainly the 2 teams left in the Champions League semifinals from La Liga. Looking forward very much to Real Madrid and Bayern Munich today, hopefully to wash away all of the taste of yesterday's match. David, follow David on Twitter, by the way. David, Jaca is his Twitter handle. Thank you for your time, sir, as always.
Thank you.
All right,
nice
let's take a break real quick. We'll come back, we'll reset, we'll open up Orlando City's stadiums issues, maybe controversy. We'll take your phone calls. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com. You've got to do something about these mind crimes.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, closing out a Wednesday edition of the program. Thank you very much to Peter Shad, David Cartlidge. Both of those guys know their stuff. Great to have good guests on this show. I love having guests on this show. In fact, I love when we are just full up of guests, because then I don't have to do as much talking, and that's fun. I also like it when you guys call, because then you can talk, give me your perspective, questions of the day. I know Nick wanted to get in on the Sir Alex Ferguson picking the successor question that we presented at the end of the last hour. Phone lines are open, 347-756-6276, if you have thoughts on that. While we hold and wait and leave that question out there, I think it's time to address a bubbling controversy in Orlando that came up yesterday. I'm fascinated by this. And I'll admit that I hadn't considered this possibility, that after Orlando approved their stadium funding, after everything was moving forward, Orlando City got their franchise handed to them by MLS, that once MLS moved to other markets, and in this case Atlanta, with the team being placed in an NFL venue, that people in Orlando might not take too kindly to that, and that there might be appearances of a double standard. Keep that thought in mind. 419, you're on the air.
Hey, what's up, Jason? This is Nick from Toledo.
Nick from Toledo, you're a United guy. You want to talk about United, I imagine.
Absolutely. I just wanted to kind of respond to what you were talking about regarding Sir Alex Ferguson.
Sure.
I agree with United kind of letting him be involved in the process. The guy has a wealth of knowledge, and yet he made mistakes with the selection of Moyes. He's made some mistakes with some players in the past as well. So we certainly know Sir Alex is not perfect, but he is one of the greatest managers of all time. So it's probably a good idea to have him as part of the process. Now, maybe not making the final decision as far as who the next coach will be, but at least have him part of the process and maybe on some sort of panel.
Well, there's the problem, Nick. I think the question is, how does United put someone in place who can make that decision if it's not going to be Alex Ferguson? Who's the guy to make that decision? They don't have a director of football. They don't have somebody who is over the top of the manager and is in charge of the entire football operation. They have the team, and in this case, it was Ferguson and then Moyes, and now for the time being, Giggs. I imagine he'll be answering to corporate type executives. These aren't people who should be making that. The Glazers shouldn't be making this decision.
I agree with you 100%. I think what it's going to come down to, Ed Woodward, he's the CEO of United right now. It will be his final call, and really, when it comes down to the success of the next manager, it will be his head who will be on the line rather than Sir Alex Ferguson. So it's just an interesting time to be a United fan with all this turmoil. We have not had this in a really long time.
Yeah, it's been a while since United felt the sting of being like everybody else. And that's what the deal is right now. Nick, your team is like everybody else, and I'm sure that's a tough pill to swallow. You'll get through it. It's still a big club. You'll be fine, Nick. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm not too worried. There's a name that's out there that I'm interested in. I don't know why nobody has mentioned his name, but I really enjoyed Harry Redknapp, but you never hear his name, which I don't know. Maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I don't know that United fans would take too kindly to Harry Redknapp being their manager. He doesn't really seem to fit the United mold. I appreciate the phone call, Nick. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Jason.
Good input there on United from a United fan. It's going to be fascinating to see who they turn to after this summer, because Giggs for now, Giggs till the end of the season, reset after the World Cup. Take a look at what the options are, and there might not be too many. And Louis van Gaal could be named as manager for Manchester United before we even get to the World Cup. I mean, he's going to be free after that. You can go ahead and name him, I suppose. I don't know what that would necessarily mean for the club in the short term, but in the long term, at least you have the idea of who's going to be in charge. And maybe he can start working on how to fix this club, how to fix that team. All right, let's go back to this Orlando Stadium issue. Now, if you're a little confused, and maybe I haven't completely fleshed this out all the way, the issue is that Orlando was told by MLS to get a team, you need a soccer-specific stadium. The Citrus Bowl just isn't going to do. 50,000 seats, open air, in a bowl configuration, which is not great for soccer atmosphere. You're going to need a soccer stadium. So the team went into the community. They talked to the representatives on the city council. They got a package together. They negotiated it out. They got tourist dollars, if I'm understanding this correctly, tourist dollars earmarked to help with that stadium. They got help with the land acquisition. They still haven't finished that, by the way, and that's another issue. But they got all that done. They got that signed, and they're ready to go. And then Atlanta is handed the franchise by MLS. Arthur Blank gets a team. Arthur Blank's going to put his team in an NFL stadium, which is not a soccer-specific building. Now, the obvious thing to mention is that stadium was built with soccer in mind, at least partly. I mean, it was a football stadium that they also made sure could host some soccer if necessary. That's not what the Citrus Bowl is. So there's that to consider. But a man who was always against the stadium funding plan in Orlando, Ted Edwards, which is just great name. Orange County Commissioner Ted Edwards was asked by a reporter, do you feel like MLS has duped the citizens here? Based on what I've seen, absolutely, Edwards said. He said, Edwards has an issue with Major League Soccer because it awarded a franchise to Atlanta, and the team will play in the Falcons' new $1 billion stadium. In Orlando, a new soccer-specific stadium was required, and playing at the renovated Citrus Bowl was not an option for the new team. Now, on the face of it, it looks like a double standard. It looks bad for MLS. It does. And I don't think that Ted Edwards is going to be concerned about the differences between the Citrus Bowl and the NFL stadium, despite the fact they're fairly obvious. And I don't think the people of Orlando who are against the idea of building a soccer stadium at all are going to care. They're going to rally behind this apparent double standard. Here's Major League Soccer's response. Major League Soccer's new expansion club in Atlanta will be playing in a stadium built for soccer. The state-of-the-art retractable roof stadium in downtown Atlanta includes new emerging technology which provides an intimate environment for our fans to enjoy the beautiful game. MLS has repeatedly stated the importance of creating intimate fan experiences in our stadiums. With a soccer stadium capacity of 29,000, Atlanta's new $1.2 billion stadium fully achieves the league's initiatives, similar to how Orlando City SC's new $80 million stadium accomplishes this goal. They mentioned that they're proud of the public-private partnership in Orlando, and they look forward to the first season of MLS in Central Florida next year. By the way, Orlando City will play one full year at the Citrus Bowl as they wait for that stadium to be built in downtown Orlando. And again, as far as I'm aware, all of the land necessary to build the place hasn't yet been acquired. There was the issue with a church, eminent domain in play, whether or not a fair value offer was made to the church. These things are still in play. And whether you believe Atlanta is a mistake for MLS, the residual effect, the knock-on effect of giving a team to Atlanta that's going to play in an NFL building, even if it has soccer in mind from the blueprints, even if they have a process for making an more intimate environment, the knock-on effect is that people like in Orlando are going to say, hey, wait a second. And the knock-on effect is the fans around the country who are watching MLS expansion are going to say, hey, wait a second. You said soccer-specific stadium was the standard. You said that a city needed to have a downtown soccer-specific venue in order to get a team. And now you're giving one to a team with an NFL building. MLS treating their expansion policy very much like they treat their roster rules. They're flexible. We can move them around. That may be the best thing for MLS strategically in a long-term future, but it doesn't look good. Makes the league look like they have double standard. Makes the league look like they're going back on their word. And it doesn't seem fair. I get it from the league's perspective. Hey, this is why you go to Atlanta. And yeah, that building is going to be draped and 29,000 will be the capacity and it'll look decent and okay, turf, whatever. Salty Block Boy on Twitter. I think it's simple. The Fusion and Tampa both failed. A soccer-specific stadium would guarantee more success for Orlando. Yeah, sure. That's exactly it. And MLS is not going to Orlando without this stadium deal. They wouldn't do that. Now I guess that begs the question for all of the opponents of the stadium in Orlando, whether or not they would have, well, not the opponents, the people who signed on. Would you have been against it, against that stadium, if you knew there might be a double standard down the road or an apparent double standard? People calling this MLS 1.0, the Atlanta deal. I don't think it measures up to MLS 1.0, but again, We are spoiled. MLS fans are spoiled. You got the refurbished place in Portland downtown. Was built redone with soccer in mind. Looks fantastic. You got downtown stadiums in Houston. You got brand new buildings in Harrison, New Jersey, relatively speaking. You got soccer specific venues popping up all over the place. So when MLS says, well, Atlanta is the place we want to be, and our best option is an NFL building drawn down to 29,000 with drapes. Again, you have to balance out how important it is to you that the league grows and expands its television footprint and gets more in TV contracts versus how fairly it operates. How important is how fairly the league operates to you? That informs so much of how you process MLS. How much do you care if the rules are fair, if the expansion standards are fair? How much do you care? If you really, really, really care, you're probably not an MLS fan. Because there is a lot of appearances of inequality and unfairness and double standards, which, again, may end up working out for the league in the long run, but don't look good right now. Can you be an ends justify the means type person? I kind of am. I'm not saying MLS gets everything right, and I'm not saying that they're doing all the right things now. I question Atlanta, and I'll question some of these other things. But in a lot of situations, I understand the flexibility needed to make sure that this league is going to go in the places that they want it to. I'm fine with the way it is now. I don't necessarily need a league that's the third most popular sport in America. But I'm not the average fan, I don't think. Go to soccermorning.com to find out how you can support the show. This is incredibly important, guys. Again, just to repeat what I said off the top. This is basic stuff. I mean, this is just to keep the show going. This is what we're doing. We're listener supported. We need your help. So if you can, anything that you give is greatly appreciated. We are working through a backlog of contributors. We're going to continue to do that. We got, again, music from Patrick Schroeder today. Thank you very much to him for his contribution and his music. We got more coming up. We got more guest hosts coming up. We're doing this. We're going through this process. And for Soccer Morning, this is what I do for now. And I can justify it for now because you guys are supporting it. But in the end, bottom line, in order to stay on the air, I feel like honesty is the best policy here. In order to pay my rent, keep the lights on, I got to figure out where I'm getting that. This isn't like extra stuff. I'm not going out and buying cars with this money. Trust me. Putting gas in the one car I do have. All right. Thanks a lot for listening. Thank you to Peter Shad. Go follow him on Twitter. Great follow. And David Cartledge. He's an excellent follow as well. We will talk to you guys. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Tomorrow's Thursday. Champions League today. So excited. Oh, New York and Houston tonight. Damn, I didn't even mention that. And Rafa Marquez got a red yesterday, which is hilarious. Thanks a lot for listening. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, soccermorning.com. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.